Host Gloria Cunningham welcoming you to the John Telford Detroit Show, coming to you live every morning at 10 o'clock a.m. on WJZZ Cool TV. Dr. John Telford is a former Detroit Public Schools superintendent, a former conqueror of Olympic track champions, a championship track coach, poet, newspaper columnist, and author of 8 books available at Amazon.com or by calling 313-460-8272. That's 460-8272. A recipient of the Detroit City Council Spirit of Detroit Award and the Joe Louis Foundation Spirit of the Champ Award. Dr. Telford was named Wayne State University's Alumnus of the Year, and a Detroit track is named for him. His email address is drjohntelfordedd@aol.com. That's drjohntelfordedd@aol.com. So coming to you now is Dr. John Telford and his wonderful guests.
Thank you, Gloria Cunningham, for that wonderful introduction in your usual melodious voice,
You and that.
which you also do on another station, not to be named. And our guest today is Anthony Adams, my man Anthony Adams, entrepreneur, attorney, former president of the school board in Detroit, and just all-around activist. My name is Detroit. I'm a blue-collar town. Blue salt melts my mid-March snow. Speedy cars and sprinters spring from me. I father fierce fighters and funky music. In a Motown moment, I can spit the blues right back in a bureaucrat's eye. Have you never seen blue salt? No complex chemistry here, only the old color of a new sky. And there's a new sky dawning on Detroit today because we have got Anthony Adams in the station today. Anthony Adams is here, so Anthony, welcome to the John Telford Detroit Show with Gloria Cunningham.
Oh, Dr. Telford, Ms. Cunningham, good morning, and thank you for having me on your show this morning.
Well, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you. And before I forget, I've got to say this because Doyle Johnson is still in a real heap of trouble. Doyle Johnson, one of my former students and trackmen at Southeastern High School, who's been self-employed for 52 years, just suffered a devastating fire at his office on Van Dyke in Detroit that destroyed most of his inventory and 90% of his equipment. His building insurance had lapsed because in Detroit, insurers want you to carry a $10,000 deductible, which is prohibitive, for a small business. Doyle has given back to the community big time. Ever since the 1960s, he has given blood at the Red Cross. He's mentored young people at Southeastern High School, and he serves as president of the Southeastern High School Alumni Association. Mm-hmm. So a GoFundMe account has been set up by his daughter to help with rebuilding his business. And I've been saying this on all of my shows because we've got to get his business rebuilt. You can find the site at Doyle Johnson, DoyleJohnson, Doyle Johnson, DoyleJohnson, and any amount will be greatly appreciated. So we have got Anthony Adams in the studio today. Anthony, give us a little background on yourself.
Born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, went to the Cincinnati Public Schools. A commuter kid, went to the University of Cincinnati, similar to Wayne State.
Oscar Robertson used to play basketball.
The Big O. Left there, went to Georgetown Law School in Washington, D.C. I moved to Detroit, I think, back in 1981, I believe. took a clerkship with the Honorable Anna Diggs Taylor. She was the first black woman appointed to the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan and worked there for 2 years. Went in private practice.
Was she related to that
Congressman? Congressman Charles.
Yeah, right.
She was she was ex-wife, I think, at that
Oh,
time.
okay.
Worked in private practice at a law firm. Did a lot of litigation, and then served as executive assistant to Coleman Young for 6 years. Worked in a lot of economic development projects in the city of Detroit. I went back out into private practice at Dyke and McGossett, where I specialized in nonprofit housing, nonprofit work. Then got tapped.
Who were some other attorneys at Dyke and McGossett?
Well, you had a lot of big-time attorneys. Eugene Gargaro was one of the big partners over there. He was the guy who served as the head of the DIA. He was the Mr. DIA. You had Richard McClellan. He was sort of a powerhouse in the state legislature in Lansing.
Was Elliott Hall with him?
Elliott Hall didn't come until after I left.
He's an old trackman, you know. He ran for
Exactly.
Chadsey.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot. I mean, it was a very big firm, a big practice. But I wasn't a big practice firm guy. I didn't like the rigid nature of what went on there. And so came out and started a practice with 3 other attorneys, Taylor C.U., Darwin Fair, and Harold Pope. Well, we built a pretty good firm. Then decided to move in a different direction, did some public housing consulting across the country, and then came back and served as general counsel for Detroit Public Schools. And after that, I got tapped to become deputy mayor in the city of Detroit, interim director of the water department. Just a ton of experience in municipal operations and philanthropic operations here in our community.
And you also ran for mayor.
Yeah, I also ran for mayor. Yeah, that was an interesting experience in the city. You know, having worked in this city for a long time and knowing a lot of people, and really understanding the need that someone needed to say something. You know, far too often in this community, people really have been silent about what's happening, what's not going right. There was a lot of fear in our community that no one would stand up, you know, to the power structure. And so at great, you know, personal sacrifice, I felt that someone needed to raise their hand and say, wait a minute, all is not well in our community. Things are not going right for people who are living in the margins of society. We need to be working closer with our public education institutions in our community. We need to address the issues of gun violence in our community. We need to address the issues of housing insecurity, water insecurity. And so it was a campaign really based on the needs of the people who actually live in our community.
Yeah, you know, I ran for mayor too when Duggan was running for mayor.
Right.
And they talked me into doing it because they wanted me to shame him into getting off the EAA treasurership.
Well,
you know, he was treasurer of the old EAA.
Yeah.
You know, the Education Achievement Authority. I called it.
As they say, there's no shame in this game. You know, and when you allow people to come into our community and act with impunity and disrespect for the people who live here, people need to begin to speak up.
Well, I debated him, you know, and he did resign from the EAA treasurership after that. But I called him the Educational Apartheid Authority.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, that was the 15 schools that the Republicans took away from us for a while to try to.
And we still have a lot of education apartheid in our community, you know, with the advent, obviously, of charter schools. You've seen a lot of movement around the Mary Grove Conservancy, these specialized schools with specialized programming, with specialized funding, which really impacts the delivery of education in the city of Detroit. What used to be great about education in our community is that regardless of what school you went to, Northeastern, Southeastern, Northwestern, Murray Wright, Cooley, Cody, you got a basic education.
Right.
And part of what's missing fundamentally in our community is that people have to go to the Cass Techs, the King, the specialized schools in order to get the level of education.
And the Mary Grove.
Well, yeah, and so
that's the model now.
Well,
I mean, they've all got to become Mary Groves all across the city.
But how do you do that in a situation where you're continuing to lose student population in the city of Detroit? We have more students from Detroit Detroit who are in schools outside the district than we have in the district of the city of Detroit. Our neighborhoods are not as thriving as they should be. So what do you do? How do you reverse that? That is the question that's really on the table now. How do you create this new Detroit that people want to talk about?
Well, you start reversing it by making sure that our third graders come out of the third grade able to read, and we've still got that problem.
that's-
you know?
Yeah, we
That's
do,
real
but I mean,
serious.
that is a critical problem in our community. Is what I call the lack of intellectualism that really flows in our community. That it's not cool to be smart. It's not cool to think. It's not cool to react. And when we have families that are struggling in those margins, struggling to try to keep the water on because water rates are high, struggling because they can't afford to pay housing, we have an income issue in our own community, which requires parents and to work exceptionally long hours and not in the house to help the children learn. You know, we were fortunate. I mean, when I grew up, you know, when my mother came home from work, I had to read to my mother every day of the week and got sick of reading, quite frankly. But parents are under siege. And if a parent is under siege, a child is under siege. And if we don't recognize that our kids need to be in school all year, every day, then we're going to continue to get what we get, which are specialized reading programs that pop up like a pop-up box. We need something more than that. We need something that's going to be sustainable in our community.
They spend so much time on these cell phones and looking at games on their computers, and they're not reading or doing anything close to reading. And I went through my neighborhood. I used to deliver boxes of food to many people, so I know all of them in my neighborhood now. And I discovered a family that's like a block from me that has 7 kids. And I told 2 of them, I said, who are the kids in your family that try to always do the right thing? So the father gave me the names of 2, a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I had them write one paragraph about themselves that would make them a candidate for this Youth Appreciation Award. And the girl, the older one, she was having all kind of trouble with grammatically writing this paragraph. And she's in like the 7th grade. I said, oh, this is terrible. The young man didn't do so bad. But just the basic foundation of writing a sentence was gone.
Yeah.
And then they're going into high school, and then they're supposed to go. And then the behavior in the middle school is so bad that a lot of the teachers can't teach.
But a lot of our children, you know, are acting out because of the circumstances, you know, of their existence and the family structure that they're living within. And that's not to say that all family structures of children in our city are bad, because a lot of parents are doing the best that they can. But if we aren't really providing the level of wraparound service through programming, through support, through child care, our early enhancement programs, all the things that we need to work in concert with parents as we provide them with the help and assistance they need, then we're going to continue to struggle in our community, because we don't understand that it's not just the responsibility of the school to educate. It's also the responsibility of the parents to help and assist in the education of their children. How do we give them the perspective? How do we give them the help and support that they need? And that's been what I think one of the great failings in our community, is that we have not embraced those who need the help the most. It's great to have tax breaks and tax credits to build beautiful buildings in the city of Detroit, but if you live in a neighborhood where those tax breaks and tax captures are not permeating, then you end up quite with what we're getting, which is the level of fratricide and violence in our own community, which is endemic of the worst virus that we can have, which is self-hatred and self-loathing.
Yeah, and Gloria mentioned the literacy level of these kids that she was trying to help. Gloria, by the way, was the English department head at Finney High School when I was running the curriculum there in the discipline. But you know, last year I had kids at Frederick Douglass. You know, I'm the poet in residence for the Detroit Public Schools Community District, and I go around to the high schools and recite my poetry. But Frederick Douglass is my home school, and I had a 9th grade class there last year. Kids couldn't read.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
and-
And they're going to graduate, and they're going to try to go to college, and they'll be so behind. It's
That's,
crazy.
that's the irony when we hear
see,
these
you know,
things about we hear about growing talent,
Yeah.
in our community. They're big buzzwords which don't really get to the very core. The reason we have to grow talent is because we aren't growing our young people. We aren't providing them. We still rank way behind in terms of education funding in our own state. Why are we not investing in young people, in our education? If we strengthen our educational facilities in our state, if we strengthen our teachers, if we pay our teachers more than a decent wage, I mean, this is the big battle now with the UAW, which is well overdue. The UAW bosses for a long time were in bed with management to the detriment of the workers. And President Fain is doing exactly what he needs to do. Bring attention to the fact that people are making millions of dollars off the backs of laborers who are not getting paid a fair wage. And now all this, they're asking for too much. What is too much when corporations are making billions and people can't afford a decent wage or decent living? They need to draw the line, which is exactly what they're doing, which is exactly what needs to be done. People need to start drawing lines in our community and saying, hey, we're not going to tolerate this anymore.
I was talking about that on my other station this last Saturday morning. And the strike. I mean, we got to get behind those strikers. We got to get out there and give them coffee. We got to make sure that they're totally supported.
And I believe in unity and protest 1,000%.
Solidarity.
We would walk out of school not knowing what we were going outside for, but we knew if we didn't go out, we couldn't make a difference. And then we get out, we walk out of the school, and they say, okay, what are we out here for? And then we pass the word around, and then the teachers and that would pay attention.
Right.
But if 3 people walk out, then you're all suspended.
You came up at McKenzie during all that
McKenzie, Barton, Drew.
stuff.
Yeah, we were all over the place.
Yeah, you guys were way ahead of me. You know, I went to Northwestern and started there in 1950.
Okay.
And then I ended up getting put out, and ended up at Denby. But it was a totally different world.
It was a totally different approach to how people viewed what their roles and responsibilities were, and people understood back then that the need to protest was so fundamental to moving and advancing the cause. But now what has happened in many respects is that the leadership of our community has been so co-opted by the dollar. Everybody's trying to get paid. Everybody's trying to get paid by the nonprofit foundations of big corporations. Too many people have been co-opted, and so we don't have that same level of aggressiveness in our community that we need in order to move our agenda forward.
Okay, station ID. You're watching the Dr. John Telford Show with attorney Anthony Adams, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
And buy my book. I have a new poetry book coming out called Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, a Detroit poetic epic, in which I talk about all of the athletes that I coached or teamed with on the team at Northwestern High and Denby High and Wayne State University and the Detroit Track Club and the United States national team, and also the athletes that I raced against on some of those teams. And I also talk about my activism, because I've been a social activist my entire career. And I talk about, the apple boughs part of it is some of my experiences in those many decades with the young ladies. So get this book. You can get it at Amazon.com. Order Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs at Amazon.com. And before I forget, I want to say I got a call from my friend Tiffany Tilley the other day, and she is running. She's a Democrat. She was with me on the old 14th District Executive Board, the 14th District Democrats Executive Board, and she's on the State Board of Education now, and she is running she's running for Congress in the 10th District against James
John James.
John James, Republican John James.
Yes.
And we've got to get behind her and vote. Her email is vote Tiffany TiffanyTilley, vote Tiffany Tilley at gmail.com. That's how you can reach her. Vote Tiffany Tilley at gmail.com. And we are interviewing Anthony Adams, a gentleman who has done so much in and for this city, on the Detroit John Telfer Detroit show today with Gloria Cunningham. Anthony, tell us a little bit of some of the reasons why you ran for mayor.
Well, clearly there needed to be a conversation around the direction of the city of Detroit. When you're running against a power of money, a power of corporate privilege, power of white privilege, power of a community that believes that doesn't really believe in black leadership, which was very, very apparent and has been apparent for quite some time when you look at the composition of what goes on in the city. We don't have a black congressional representative in the city of Detroit for the first time since the 50s. It was going to be an uphill battle because people had really lost faith in black political leadership in our community. And I just felt that we need to have an honest debate about the direction, about how we were spending our tax dollars, about whether or not we were going to take care of the least of the in our community, whether we're really going to get serious about water affordability. How do you really create an affordable housing plan that's sustainable? How do you really invest in the people in the community? Those questions needed to be answered, but of course, I wasn't given the opportunity to a debate because there was a media blackout. I mean, that's what it was. No pun intended.
The fix was in. The fix was in.
The preachers were silent. They were paid off, bought off. The political leadership in this community was silent because most of them were in the back pocket, the front pocket, the side pocket of the mayor. And people were, quite frankly, they were afraid to speak up and to speak out for fear that they would lose whatever small benefit they were gaining. And when you look at how money is actually spent in this community, you see very little of that money is actually being spent with the people who are from our community. And so you had a situation where it was a very tough environment, made tougher by the fact that we were also in the middle of COVID. People kind of forget about that, where you couldn't really get out and campaign and talk to people. The senior buildings were locked down. There were just a lot of different factors in play that made it very, very difficult. And then the inability to raise the level of money that you needed in order to defeat a well-financed, well-oiled machine that had the media support, the media backing, the media grace. There was no real journalism going on in this community to really examine the record. And this is in spite of the fact that you had people's basements that were being flooded on the east side, protesters being beaten on the streets in the city of Detroit, water shut-off still at an all-time high. In spite of all of that, the people simply did not turn out. Maybe I didn't do enough to get them there, but it was a great effort from my perspective, because at least we let them know that there are people in our community who were prepared to stand up and to question and criticize what was going on in this town.
Amen. And, before I forget it, too, you were on 910 AM Superstation.
Yes.
And I think it's a disgrace that got cut off and it's turned into a sports station or something now. But anyone who was on 910, I'm saying this again, if you want to come here as a guest, Anthony was on 910, Nicole Black was on 910, Willie Burton was on 910 with Sheriff Ficano. You're all welcome. So just get a hold of me at 313-460-8272 and get on the schedule. That's John Telfer, 313-460-8272. That's my cell phone. You can contact me on that phone.
But, I tell people all the time, but when you don't own anything, you can't really determine the direction of what was going to happen. And the thing that came out of that, at least from my perspective, is what I told folk, is that that's why you need the power of alternative media. There are a lot of alternative media platforms out there that people can take advantage of. People have gotten so tied to that platform and so comfortable, but we didn't own it. And so when you don't own something, people do what they will do what's in their best interest. And it's time we start doing what's in our best interest.
And I've got a column. I write the Telford Telescope for the Detroit Native Sun, the Detroit Native Sun, and one of my pieces in here, one's about track. I always write about track. But the other one is about what has happened in Green Bay. Green Bay is going to use Detroit's reading program. The reading program that I tried to get the emergency financial manager to put in when I was superintendent of schools in Detroit, I failed. I've been trying to get Dr. Vitti to put it in. Thus far, I failed with that too. But that program is going in Green Bay, Wisconsin now because my ombudsman, who later became the assistant superintendent in charge of the high schools, Dr. Claude Tiller, I recommended him, for Green Bay, the Green Bay superintendency, and he got the Green Bay superintendency. He got the Green Bay superintendency, and he's going to put the Detroit program in, the Quick to Learn program, that is that's research based, overwhelmingly successful. And he's going to make Green Bay the model for the state of Wisconsin instead of Detroit becoming the reading model for the state of Michigan. So at least it will be happening. It will be happening in Green Bay, and this Native Sun is on the stands right now. It's out in all the stores and on the stands.
Okay, well he can grab some of my urban teens and circulate them through his system. Yeah.
Well, let's get in touch with him and get them into his hands.
He
Urban
might want to
Teen
duplicate
magazine.
it for Green Bay.
Well, why? Where's Urban Teen? It's not being circulated in DPS?
No, I have boxes and boxes of them. They're in the warehouse, but when I go down to the warehouse, they might be gone.
Oh, well, hopefully
So I put big labels on them, do not throw these away, and I went and talked to the new person that was there, and he said, okay, but then that doesn't mean anything.
Well, that's important that, we recognize local talent.
Yeah.
You talk about reading and being able to see the person who actually wrote the book, walking down the streets, being in the grocery stores. All these connections to embracing local culture, local talent. I think when you talk about getting people to read, getting children to read, we've got to use the tools that they do. Unfortunately, they use these phones. That's how they communicate.
Yeah, but it's deeper than that, Anthony. It's been, 7 years now with the new administration? And last year I had these ninth graders. They just couldn't read, and it's because they didn't get taught to read in the third grade. And it's a whole generation before we're done that we're not going to teach
But
them.
before that, we're going to teach reading before that.
Press the issue, and see, this is where we have to press the issue. And if there are deficiencies in third grade, and there are deficiencies in fourth grade, and there's deficiencies in fifth grade, then the question is, why do these deficiencies continue? What is the core reason behind why our children cannot read? Because they can learn, because they can do.
Of course
other
they can. We
things
got
right.
really smart kids here.
So what do we do to change the direction, the paradigm, the thinking around education? I don't see the level of innovation that I think we need to have in our community around education, and because the systems work opposite of one another. You can't have a strong community if you don't have strong schools. You can't have strong schools if you don't have strong communities. You can't have strong communities if you don't have strong leadership and people in those communities. The investment has got to be in the people, which is the greatest missed opportunity that we will ever see in our lifetimes, is the fact that the city got over $1 billion in art money. The school district got over $1 billion. And what have we really done with that money that's going to have a long-term impact on our neighborhoods, on our children, on the people who need the help the most?
City's not going to come back till the schools come back. It's just as simple as that. And that reading program that they are using now, it's called Beyond Basics. They've got to get that program out of there and put the Quick to Learn 2 Sigma program in there. and they've got to do it yesterday. I mean, that's, I know I sound like a broken record. I know sometimes the administration gets upset with me for saying this again and again and again. But
where's the beyond basics for the parents? I mean, and making sure that the parents have the level of support that they need in the house. A reading program can only go so far. If parents don't have the skills and the talents necessary to help their children, then we're going to continuously be grinding up this wheel of inaction, and we'll become frustrated because nothing seems to work. And so it's got to work. It's got to be much bigger than the reading program itself. It's got to be how we integrate the home life, the parents, the mental health support. All these things work in concert when you have a community that is as distressed as it is in the neighborhoods. I'm not talking about that 7.5 square mile area in downtown Detroit. I'm talking about the area where children live, where parents go to work. Most of our parents don't even work in the city of Detroit. So if you got to commute to work, how does your child get to school? How do we make sure that they have the right nourishment? How do we give them the mental support and help that they need? These are the things that we need to be talking about, and we just are missing the mark, I think, with respect to really trying to galvanize. This 911, this is a state of emergency in our community. We talked offline about the young man that was just shot, the student from E-Course got shot and killed in Detroit.
Oh, goodness.
The level of gun violence is going on in our community. Women being brutally beaten and murdered, and traffic in our community. All these things are important because they tell us that we have a sickness in our community that we have to begin to address. I don't want to hear about downtown. I don't really want to hear about Detroit district. White folks and white money, they're going to take care of themselves. But what we're talking about is how we transform our community, how we transform the lives of the people who live here. That's where the conversation needs to be.
I agree with everything you're saying there, Anthony, but I still have to say as an educator that we can't use the problems in the home as an excuse not to teach these kids. I am an educator. We have to take the kid where we find him and bring him where he needs to be in the schools. And we are feeding some of these kids in the schools.
But if we can provide the greatest environment in the world in a school, but if a child goes home to an environment that's not correct, whatever gains we give them in the school get lost. And I remember one time when I was out on the campaign trail, and I was talking at this church, and this young lady came up to me, and she was 14 years old. She told me, she says, my home life is whack. That was the term she used. She said, there are things that go on in my house that I shouldn't even be seeing. I need a different environment. I need help. How can you help me get the type of environment that I need? I'm not using the home environment as an excuse for why children cannot learn. What I'm simply saying is that we've got to understand that is a factor in why a lot of our children are not succeeding. Because we have educators that are doing the best that they can under the circumstances, that the hand that they've been dealt. And if we don't invest in our teachers, we're losing teachers by the thousands. We don't have enough educators in our own community to educate the children that we have, and we expect them to learn when we're in an educational deficit environment. That's the conversation we need to be having. How do we make this different? How do we make it so that our children are put in the best circumstance? Clearly, to me, all year-round school is something that we should have been talking about a long time
absolutely.
ago, especially after the pandemic.
Absolutely. Pre-K, year-round, all of that.
Right.
We need another
Station ID. You're watching the Dr. John Telford Show live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZC Cool TV, the coolest station in the whole world.
All right.
Thank you, Gloria Cunningham, for that station ID. And I've got to say this, Miss Virginia Starkey, fondly known simply as V, the proprietress of V's Boutique, offers a wide range of fine clothing and accessories for ladies. You can find all sizes of women's fine apparel in V's one-stop excellent customer service at V's Boutique. that you can't find anywhere else in Detroit anymore. Wjzz is at 16423 East Warren Avenue. That's 16423 East Warren Avenue, right around the corner from the old Alger Theater and right around the corner from one of the few libraries that's still open in the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
And I want to shout out to William Davis of Nan.
Oh,
He
yeah.
said he watches you all the time.
My man.
So,
Hey, Bill.
yeah, and he's a commissioner too, right?
I think he was.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Police commissioner, yes.
Yeah, my man Willie Burton's in my neighborhood now, police commissioner.
Okay.
But anyway, we're interviewing Anthony Adams on the John Telfer Detroit show with Gloria Cunningham. So, Anthony, let me ask you this question. Why do you think you lost?
Well, I think number one, obviously voter turnout was abysmal. When you look at a race where
Less than 20%.
yeah, less than 20%
Oh,
of the
goodness.
population voted. To me, that's a sign of a community
It's
that
a
is
disgrace.
defeated and disgrace. And then when you got organizations like the NAACP that were not mobilizing and get out the vote effort because they had their own political agenda in that particular race. You had preachers, again, who were silent, who were quiet because of the drainage fee and didn't want to alienate the boss for fear that they would have to pay that drainage fee. When you have a media that doesn't even promote a race, when you fail to have a mayoral debate, which could at least allow people to view candidates side by side, all those things were factors. And then with COVID and environment, those are factors that were against me. And obviously being able not to be able to raise the level of money that you need in order to finance. We had the loyal group of supporters who were out there, the people who are always out there protesting and fighting, but it simply wasn't enough. The timing wasn't right. Even though I thought the time would be right, given after 2 terms of what had been the looting and raping of the city, I thought the timing was right, but obviously it wasn't. But this next race will be much different because clearly he won't be in the race.
He's probably running for governor. That's the word.
Yeah, that's the word out there. So it'll be a different environment. It'll be a different race. People are posturing about why they should be out there, whether or not it's a legacy person, legacy candidate, 2 legacy candidates potentially that you might have in the race. It'll be an interesting dynamic because he won't be in the race and the media will have to give some attention to what needs to be done. And then the question would be, what is the future and shape and direction of the city of Detroit? And the business community is very, very nervous. They're very nervous because they understand.
Because they might get an honest mayor this time,
Well,
and they might get
yeah.
someone who's not collusive with the corporations, which is what we need to have happen. You can work with the corporations, but not be a creature of the corporations.
Exactly.
My biggest disappointment when I came back to Detroit, after running districts in the suburbs, for years, I came back home and I said, "Oh, I'm coming home now. I'm gonna be welcomed with open arms.
Yeah.
Black district, everything cool." How wrong I was, man. I was fighting. I was fighting classism, not racism.
Yeah, we clearly have a classism issue in our own community. We have a level of racism that is profound in terms of how blacks are portrayed in the media versus how whites are portrayed. The sort of the soft hand when it's a white person versus the heavy hand of the black person. We're also dealing with our own inadequacies as a people in our own community. The fact that we don't recognize and respect black leadership, because by the very fact that we have so many people that are not black who represent us. Some people say that's moving forward. I say it's not moving forward because we're not recognizing the talent. And we've done a very, very piss poor job of developing black leadership, young black leaders in our community. We got young people that run for office that haven't really done anything, don't really know anything. And in the old days, I know you had to lick the stamps, stuff the envelopes, go
To wait
door
your
to door.
turn. Had to wait your turn.
And there's something to be said about experience in these seats, because you don't become susceptible to the easy game playing that these folks do. The power is masterful in how they manipulate people, and if you don't understand how power operates, you can't be effective.
Okay. Slightly different subject. Nursing homes.
Yes.
I am connected to several of them over the last 7 years, caring for my father, and I'm one of those that comes twice a day and make sure he's eating right, make sure he's clean, and he's walking. He's 94. But I have come into so much trouble because I'm there all the time.
Yes.
And I call it black woman syndrome,
Yeah.
because we're
Angry black
attacking,
woman.
we're attacking each other like crazy, and they just bully me, and their answer to everything is, well, just don't let me come anymore.
Well,
So they're neglecting him in several areas, but I do have him in a different place now. He's only been there 11 days. So far they aren't bothering me, and I'm keeping quiet and loving Dad. So what can we do through attorneys and legally to deal with how they mistreat people in nursing homes, the family and the residents?
well, having been in the nursing home business, I tell you the most important thing that a nursing home staff can have are caregivers who are responsible and who come into the facilities at all hours of the day and night. The beauty of these facilities is that they are open 24 hours a day, and you should be in a position to come to in any facility at any point in time of the day to check on your loved one. They also have networks that are set up where you can report elder abuse through the state of Michigan, and I think that needs to be done a lot more, because there's a lot of abuse that goes on in these facilities that goes unreported.
Tons.
And I think we as lawyers, we're on the ready to take on these elder abuse cases, to sue these nursing homes to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do, that they follow the guidelines and regulations. The other side of the coin is that the funding formula for nursing homes in the city of Detroit, quite frankly, really acts as a deterrent to the level of investment that a lot of these facilities need. They're excluded from a lot of financing programs that the state would have that I think would make it easier for them to borrow the money and to build the types of facilities that we need. We see some new facilities obviously being built, but we need a lot more investment, a lot more oversight, and people just have to be vigilant in watching what goes on in these facilities.
Yeah, and it's a difficult job, and one person is caring for 27 people, and so they can only go in and do a little bit here, a little bit there, but then the residents are being neglected, and they're getting bed sores and
Yeah, your dad's
all
getting bed
kinds of-
sores.
When we talk about training programs designed to enhance the skill levels, providing the economic support for CNAs who really are the backbone of that facility, giving them a path forward in terms of going on becoming nurse practitioners in the nursing profession. All these things have to work side by side if you're talking about increasing the skill level of the people who provide the service in these facilities.
Yeah, the nurse practitioners, they have it great. They might go to the one that comes to where my father is now. She comes twice a week, and she just strolls around and answers questions,
Right.
and then they leave and go to the next facility for 2 days, and she's quite happy. But I am getting good information from her.
Okay.
But she's not physically caring for him.
Right.
And then there's a shortage in that arena too.
Yes.
And then they're bringing people in to be seniors that aren't certified because they don't have enough staff.
Yeah.
And then this 22-year-old is coming in to care for some people that have all kind of difficulties, and they may not have had, I call it boo-boo, on their hands before.
Therein lies the problem when you talk about building a strong economy, building a strong base of people who actually can work in the community, providing them with the economic support, because the wage structure of the healthcare industry, especially where we predominate in the lower levels of the program, are very, very low. So how do you increase that wage structure so that they can get a decent wage, so you can attract better people with better pay? I have to be able to make a living even whatever job I have, and we just simply don't have enough parity and the economics of that industry to provide, I think, the level of financing that people need to have a meaningful living.
Yeah. Well, Station ID, you're watching the Dr. John Telford Show with Anthony Adams, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
And Gloria, thanks for that station ID. You know, you mentioned that your father in that first nursing home where he was got bed sores.
Matted hair, all kinds of things. Foot, he had a big giant sore on his foot because they left him in bed for days, and then they leave him in the chair for the other days. They don't change him. They don't check him. Where he was, the rooms were real tiny. You couldn't get into the restroom, so they just roll him over and change him every couple of days, you know.
That's sad.
I presume there's still evidence of those bed sores on his person.
It is. I have photos now. So
You got
I've
photos?
Yep,
Good.
I got a
Because
photo.
I think you need to sue that nursing home.
And everybody says, "Oh, you have to go to the state." I went from A to Z. I complained and talked to everyone in the world. I talked to the state 3 times. I talked to managers of the managers. It's just, I gave it everything I have. So now I want to know, they need to be accountable for what they're doing, and not just to my father, to several people.
Right.
They just lay in the bed for weeks, and then those that are bedridden, they need help too.
Yeah.
But because they know, well, they have to be in the bed, so they just
yeah.
neglect them. They might change them once a day.
Man, that's
It's real.
really
It's
sad.
really bad. If families can keep their families together, keep them at home, and then everybody in the family has to assist. There's usually one person in the family that's caring for this other family member all by themselves. I'm the only one that goes to my father's nursing home. He has 7 grandkids, and they're grown, and they don't ever come. And they give us these little teeny tiny reasons. Well, he didn't get me a popsicle that day 12 years ago. You know, the crazy stuff. And I said, go see, this is your mother's father.
That's so much trauma.
Well, he wasn't really a granddad. He didn't do this, and I said he lived in Ohio for 10 years.
Well, we got trauma. We have family trauma. We have family trauma that people harbor issues that is very hard to get past if you don't recognize the trauma that you're in, for sure.
Anthony, talk a little bit about where the state of Michigan is headed. What's your opinion on that?
And what about the governor? Add that in there too.
I'm not optimistic about the state. Well, it's a two-sided coin. At one level, I don't think we're making the level of investment in public education in our elementary schools, in our pre-K, in our high schools that we need in order to push ourselves forward up the ladder in terms of what we pay per pupil funding in education. We're one of the only states in the union that actually lost population, which is ironic given the fact that we have the one thing that you cannot replace, create, which is fresh water around our community. And how do you use that water? How do you use the connection? How do you use the great transportation arteries? How do you really retool the economy? They're betting big on electric vehicles, electrification, things of that nature.
I get it.
I just wonder if that is the future.
Yeah, okay, and we'll talk more about that because I want to have you on again, but I've just been advised by my co-host that we're running out of time. So we
They told me make sure I tell you that. You've been watching the John Telford Show with Dr. John Telford and me, Gloria Cunningham, coming to you on WJZZ Cool TV every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. Also streaming on YouTube and Facebook. Contact him at 313-460-8272. And he can connect you to all of his wonderful books. And I'm going to let him talk his way out.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the John Telford Detroit Show. We've been hosting Anthony Adams. And Anthony, you're going to get a tape of this show because Roger Penzabeni always sends me a tape of it, and you can use it any way you choose. This has been a very good show, And thank you for coming on, and I am hopeful that you will come on again.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you, Gloria. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Okay,
And
and I was
thank-
going to do this. I didn't want to disturb you.
Uh-oh.
Let's see, I'll take this right
You want to take that?
here.
Okay.
And I said, if I do that while he's talking, he goes, what you doing?
Uh-oh.
And thank everyone for listening.
All right, that's cool.
All
And
right.
that does it for today. And now let's go take that picture.
All right.
Him in that picture. He'll call me 25 times. Did you send me the picture? Send me the picture.
That's what I do. And then she has to send it to her son and have him send it.
Oh, yeah, because I'm like,
Maybe we, Anthony,
you might have
maybe
to.
we should take it on your phone.
I
he
want to
can
get in the
send-
middle of the fight now.
No, I
Well, take them on both
Just
of
gotta
them.
make sure we got the.
yeah, you'll get it.
Because I put this stuff, you know, on all over the place. I put it on paper, in papers, and everything else. Gotta get it well publicized.